Murdered, a podcast. I'm your host, AB. And this week on Mama Murdered, a podcast, we're diving into part 2 of the insane case of Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn. Now, last week we went over how the two of them met, how they fell in love, and the struggles that they faced in the beginning of their relationship. So, as always, if you haven't already, then I would highly suggest that you go back and listen to the first part of this case, or else this episode may not make a whole lot of sense to you. Last week we left off on Denise being kidnapped and taken from Aaron's house in the middle of the night. We also went over Aaron calling 911 even against direct orders from the kidnappers. And then I left you hanging when the man who is only known as the Voice came into the house where Denise was being kept, and the Voice had explained to her that someone was going to have sex with her, aka rape her, since this ransom plan was never meant for her, but for Aaron's ex-fiancée Jennifer instead. Now, the Voice had left the room and come back in to tell Denise that he would actually be the one to rape her, since it was his screw-up, and since he didn't realize that Denise and Aaron's ex looked so similar. And I'm really sorry because I lied to you all last week when I told you this was only going to be 2 parts, but we all know that this is who I am as a person. It'll probably be 3. That was my bad, okay? Okay. So, with all that being said and without further ado, let's get it. Now, during the book, Denise says that she realized pretty quickly that this rape was going to happen and that there was not really anything that she could do about it. But she also says that hearing that she was about to be raped sent her right back to her childhood when she was 12 and she was molested. And she says that she was thinking all of these things to herself as the Voice walked out of the room. Because remember, the Voice had told Denise that it was going to be hard on him to even be able to rape her. And poor, pitiful him. Ugh. And she even says that she partly believed what he was saying, though she does say she doesn't know why she believed him. So, what happened? If you remember from last week, the Voice came in and told Denise that one of the men were going to have sex with her, and that's just how he worded it. He was just kind of like, one of us is going to have sex with you so that we have something to use as blackmail against you, since this kidnapping was never really meant for you. And then he told her a few minutes later that the group of men had decided that he, the man known as the Voice, would be the one to do the rape. And that the Voice and Denise were going to have to make this look like a couple that was just together that was having consensual sex. And then he told her that he needed a minute to get himself together because this rape was going to be hard for him since he had just gotten engaged 2 weeks prior to this. So this is where we kind of left off last week. I kind of wanted to recap just to make sure that we were all on the same page and we remembered where we left off last week. So Denise was just kind of left there in that room on the bed alone, just kind of thinking about what was about to happen to her, while the Voice says that he had to go get himself ready. And Denise says that she immediately went back to when she was 12 and when she was molested and how that all made her feel then. She explains in her book that she was molested by a 29-year-old man on a family camping trip, and this trip was just kind of a trip where a lot of extended family and family friends just got together, just like one big group of people. And Denise had kept this molestation to herself until she was 25 years old after she started therapy, and that's when she finally broke down and told her mom what had happened. Denise says that she played through the molestation that had happened to her when she was 12 while she waited for the Voice to come back into the room. After about a half an hour or so, the Voice did return to the room where Denise was being kept, and she remembered that the Voice asked if he could lay in the bed with her and get to know her better before they had to do this, so that he felt better about what he was about to have to do to her. And Denise said it perfectly. She said that the Voice was kind of acting like the two of them were on some sort of date trying to get to know each other better. The man, solely known as the Voice, then climbed into bed with Denise, and he asked Denise to tell him a little bit about herself. She says she knew better than to lie because obviously these people had ways of gathering information about people that they attacked. So instead of lying to him, Denise tells the Voice about the work that she does as a physical therapist. She tells the Voice that she only has 2 weeks left in her residency at Kaiser Hospital, and that she was supposed to be scheduled to take her final written exam the following day. The Voice, weirdly reassured Denise that she would probably be able to reschedule the written exam, and he kind of tells her not to worry about it. And then Denise tells the voice about how Aaron is passionate about his work as a physical therapist, and she tells him that his passion is one of the reasons that she fell in love with Aaron in the first place. And then the voice says something really weird to Denise. He tells Denise that when he spoke to Aaron back at the house that he seemed like a really good guy. And then the voice says that things like this just shouldn't happen to people like her and Aaron. Why is he so weird? The voice also tells Denise a little bit more about himself. He explains that he had been in the military and that he suffered from PTSD and insomnia. The voice tells Denise that he had tried more than once to live a normal life, but that it had never really worked out for him. And that doing jobs like this were really the only way that he could make money while still being able to utilize his skills that he had and the skills that he picked up in the military. The voice then tells Denise that one of his brothers that he's really close with is having to have some kind of operation that costed a few $100,000, which, what kind of operation is that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? I'm not sure. But he tells Denise that he's doing this because he has to help his brother financially. Denise says that it's pretty clear that the voice really just needs somebody to talk to, so she turned her body to face him with her eyes still covered with the blacked out swim goggles, and she just listened intently. And I'm sure she hopes that this will help humanize her, and maybe he'll show some sort of empathy towards her. But then Denise says that lying beside the voice, that she could feel the power that he had over her, just like radiating within. And she says that she felt like if she gave him one reason to, that he would make her time there as miserable as possible. So she says that she just decided right then and there that she would treat him with only kindness and respect. And as she put it in her book, killing people with kindness always works better than fighting fire with fire. So that was basically her plan. She would be kind and respectful, and she would just kind of hope for the best. And Denise even tells the voice about how she was molested when she was 12. And she tells him how she's gone to therapy and tried to utilize the tools and steps that she'd learned from her therapist to regain her life after this trauma. The voice tells Denise that he realizes that she's a really strong person, and he tells her that he's even kind of impressed with how well she's handled this entire situation. Now, after Denise and the voice talk for a few minutes, the voice tells Denise that he's going to grab some wine before they have to begin. He leaves the room for a few minutes, and he comes back in a short time later, and he tells Denise that it's time. The voice tells Denise that he plans to be gentle with her so that it isn't any worse than it has to be. This man is either real sick, real twisted, or genuinely fucked up. He acts like he cares about the comfort and well-being of this kidnapping victim, which I highly doubt. So that only leaves like sadistic, twisted, sick, all the words. The voice tells Denise that there is a video camera that will be set up on the dresser. And Denise starts to mentally check herself out of reality. She says that the voice starts undressing her body. And again, the voice tells Denise that he plans to be gentle with her. He also says that he plans to wear a condom and that he's going to try to, quote unquote, try to help prepare her orally, which he does. And I'm just so sure that this felt like 100 years before he finally pulled his face from between her legs. She says that she could hear him stand up and remove his clothes, and she says that she can hear what sounds like a condom wrapper that he puts on, and what sounds like a camera being set on the dresser and, recorded. And we all have to keep in mind the fact that this voice has already told Denise that this needed to look like a couple that is having consensual sex with one another. So he puts on this condom and he climbs on top of her, and Denise says that he's kissing her neck and chest. And I'm just not real sure how she was able to keep herself composed enough to let this man pretend like they were a couple. I don't think I'll ever be that strong, but she was. She knew that fighting wasn't going to help, and she knew that he wanted her to fight. I feel like Denise was kind of able to gauge him because they had spent quite a bit of time together before this. And I think that she knew that he only needed one reason to make this already horrific experience 10 times worse. And she just wasn't going to give him a reason to do that. So the voice moves Denise's body into a few different positions and angles, and she can hear the camera being moved as she is switched into different positions. And I just don't see how a woman in blacked out swim goggles being pulled and moved into different positions and not making a single noise would ever look consensual. And Denise seemed to be thinking the same exact thing, because she recalled in her book that when the voice was about to climax, that he whispered into her ear saying this entire thing was bullshit. And even though it seemed like he had been enjoying himself, Denise says that as soon as he whispered into her ear that this was bullshit, that at that very moment she realized she would be raped again. Because like I said, there's no way this looked consensual, and Denise knew that too. Now, once the voice was finished, he helped Denise up and he walked her to the restroom so that she could shower and wash any potential DNA and evidence off of her body. And when Denise made it into the restroom, the voice tells her that she can finally take the swim goggles off of her face, but only when she's in the room alone. So whether it be the restroom or the bedroom, she can take them off and he'll kind of knock on the door before he enters so she has time to put them back on. Then the voice tells Denise that he left some toiletries in the restroom for her to use, and he makes a weird comment about how he knows how hard this was for her to endure. The voice tells Denise to make sure that she has the swim goggles back over her face before he comes into the room, and he leaves her in the restroom alone to shower. Denise pulls the goggles off of her face, and she looks at herself in the mirror for the first time since she was taken from Aaron's house in the middle of the night. She says that she didn't even recognize herself in the mirror. The woman in the mirror looked mentally and emotionally drained and broken. Denise looked around the restroom and she saw a few travel-sized bottles of like shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, toothbrush, and a comb. All of these things were new and unused, so Denise showers and she gets dressed. The voice knocks on the door, which would signal to Denise that she needs to put the swimming goggles back on her eyes. The voice comes into the bathroom and he walks Denise from the restroom back into the bedroom where she was being held. Once they're back in the bedroom, Denise asks the voice what time it was, and his answer was kind of surprising. The voice told Denise that it was about 6 p.m., but then he tells her that they had left Aaron's house before sunrise and had driven about 45 minutes before they switched her to the second car. And then he tells her that it took about 3 or 4 hours of driving to get to the house that they were at now, and that they arrived at this house at around 10 a.m. I feel like this was a super, super detailed way of saying it's 6 p.m., but like whatever. The voice then tells Denise that she'll be forced to take another dose of benzos, which I think would be like a Xanax or something similar. The bottle that Denise was given with the benzo medication in it, she says it was like a small 5-hour energy bottle like you get at the gas station. I'm sure that it wasn't a 5-hour energy drink because the benzo would typically be considered a downer and an energy drink would be considered an upper. So maybe they just used a small bottle to put the dose in. I'm not really sure. But later on for dinner, the voice brought Denise in some pizza, wine, and a salad that he had delivered to the house. She ate what she could and she drank the wine that he'd left her, and of course, the doses of benzos put Denise right to sleep. The next morning when she wakes up, the voice came into the bedroom where Denise was, and she asked if anyone had heard from Aaron. And she also asked if anyone had tried to reach her on her phone. She even asked if she'll be released in time to go to work the next day, which just shows you how much this lady loves her job. The answer that the voice gave her was kind of jaded. Denise recalls that when she asked the voice these questions, he answered her in a tone like he was a 3-year-old child who was naive to the way of the world or something. The voice answered her by telling her that she doesn't realize how severe this situation truly is, and that she doesn't realize how much she's going to be affected by the events that she'll go through, and that work should probably be the last thing on her mind, that, the last thing she should even be worried about. He even tells her that it'll take a long time for her to recover from this. I'm sorry, sir. No shit. But Denise can't tell if he's pissed off because she isn't like flailing and screaming and fighting back, or if there's something else that's gonna happen to her that just hasn't happened yet. But Denise says that she's determined not to give him the satisfaction of panicking and begging and pleading, so instead she just asked the voice if his higher-ups had a chance to look at the recording from where they, quote-unquote, had sex. aka the recording of him raping her. He kind of brushed all of her other questions off, but he did tell Denise that he hadn't heard anything from his higher-ups yet. Then the voice tells Denise that the other men in his group will be coming by in about half an hour to check to see the setup and to make sure that everything is running smoothly. He advises Denise that it would be in her best interest to pretend like she's asleep when they show up, telling her that they may not be as nice to her as he is, which I'm sure was terrifying to even hear. Then the voice says that since the other men are stopping by, that he's gonna have to zip tie her, to the lock at the top of the bed frame. So Denise asked the voice if he could give her another dose of the sedative medication that he'd already given her a few times before. She figured if she was asleep, then these other men maybe wouldn't mess with her, which is actually pretty smart to even think about if we're being honest. So the voice does exactly as Denise asked. He gives her another dose of sedatives. But even regular old NyQuil doesn't work instantly. It takes time to get in your system and do whatever it does. So Denise was still awake a short time later when she heard a truck pull up somewhere close to the house. She heard the doors to the truck open and close, and then shortly afterwards, the door to the bedroom that she was being kept in was opened. Denise had kind of balled herself up into a comforter that was on the bed, covering her head, face, and body, so that these men would think that she was asleep. And thank God, she heard the door to the room that she was being kept in just close. So it opened and closed. Luckily, nothing happened. Denise can hear music playing from another room in the house, and she says that she can feel the tension of the men having a conversation, and it doesn't sound very pleasant. It also doesn't sound like they're fighting, just more like an intense conversation where you can kind of feel the tension rising. After Denise hears the truck pulling out of the driveway, the voice comes back into the room to tell Denise that the other men are gone and that they won't need to come back again to check on her. So, since they don't have to come back, the voice unties Denise's hands from the bed frame, since he had only really tied her up because they were coming in to check to make sure that things were running smoothly. So the voice unties her hands and he closes the door to the bedroom where Denise is being kept, and she falls asleep for a little while. That is until the voice comes into the room again. This time he's telling her that they're going to have to record a proof of life. He tells Denise that during this proof of life that she'll need to identify herself using her full name. He also says that Denise will need to say that she's been kidnapped, but that otherwise she's fine. Next, Denise would need to prove that the recording had been made on this exact day by naming off some kind of life event that had been reported on in the news. And then lastly, the voice tells Denise that after she names off this event that's been reported on, that she would need to name off some kind of personal detail that only people that were really, really close to her would know is true. So it would need to be something that doesn't apply to just everyone, and it would need to be something that not just some random person would know about her. Denise agrees, and she and the voice go over exactly what she'll need to say during this proof of life recording. And the voice and Denise go over these things that she needs to say over and over and over again. But remember, Denise had recently just taken some sort of sedative to keep her from being awake when the other men or members of this group had come to check in on things. So even while she's repeating exactly what she would need to say during this proof of life, she's still pretty groggy and fatigued. But even so, she and the voice practice what she needs to say until finally the voice thinks Denise knows what she needs to say without being prompted. So he tells her that he's getting the recording device ready, and he prompts her to begin her proof of life statement. This proof of life statement said, quote, "I am Denise Huskins. I am kidnapped. Otherwise, I'm fine. Earlier today, there was a plane crash in the Alps. 158 people died. And one thing that not many people know about me is that my first concert I went to with Bethany and her mom to Blink-182 and Bad Religion." So this is what the voice had Denise say into a recording device so that he could send it to somebody to prove that Denise is still alive and well, for the most part anyways. If you don't include being raped and held somewhere against your will, then she's fine, according to him. And Denise says that she could hear her slurring her words, and she knew that the recording wouldn't exactly sound like herself, just because of the sedatives that she'd been given when the other men from the organization showed up to check in on her. But she'd recorded it, and that's all the voice had asked for, so that part was done. The voice tells her that it sounded fine and that it should work, so Denise lays back down, probably still trying to sleep off that last dose of sedatives. Denise goes back to sleep, and she's trying to kind of keep up with the time of day now that she can take the swim goggles off, because, the man known as the voice isn't always in the room with her. And at this point in the timeline, Denise says that she is sure that she's going to be killed after this organization got whatever it was that they wanted from Aaron, Denise, or even Jennifer. And while she lay waiting on whatever was going to happen next, she thought about her life and kind of came to grips with the fact that she was going to be killed, and she came to the realization that she had done more in her short time on Earth than most people do in their entire lifetimes. So she was okay with whatever was going to happen to her next. Denise finally falls asleep again, thinking about her family and what's going to happen next, but when she wakes up, she decides that the best thing for her to do is to try to stretch out her body. She does some Pilates, just tries to get her blood moving. And then later, the voice comes into the room that Denise is being kept in, and he takes her on another routine bathroom break before he takes her back into the room where she's being held at. That's when he tells her that the organization has lost contact with Aaron. Now, obviously, Denise's mind went straight to thinking that maybe Aaron was hurt or possibly even dead, because let me remind you, Denise has absolutely no idea that Aaron has gone to the police for help. She damn sure doesn't know that the police had basically already made their mind up that she was dead and that Aaron killed her. She doesn't know any of this still. So now let's jump back to what's going on with Aaron, where we left off last week with him being questioned by the police and what he was being put through. Aaron was left alone in the interrogation room after going round and round and round with Detective Mustard, who, if you'll remember from last week, is the detective that swore that Aaron murdered Denise. He was so sure that he was willing to tell Denise's parents that she was already dead, that they were just looking for a body at this point. Now, after Detective Mustard had left Aaron alone in the interrogation room for hours, he finally comes back in to let Aaron know that the FBI is now involved, since this would be considered an adult kidnapping for ransom, which is good news for Aaron. Aaron was sure that the FBI would believe him, and it kind of gave him hope that maybe the FBI would, use their resources to actually find Denise. Now, after Detective Mustard tells Aaron that the FBI is involved, he also tells Aaron that they want to give him a polygraph test, so that maybe that'll help rule Aaron out as a suspect. Aaron says that he knew that lie detector tests weren't admissible in court, but he also says that he knew that those types of tests can be unreliable. But he also says that he knew that he could pass it because he was telling the truth. Aaron eventually agrees to take a polygraph test, and Detective Mustard leads Aaron into an interrogation room, which was almost identical to the interrogation room that he'd been left in the first time. Aaron sits down across from a man in a gray suit who looked like the epitome of what you would assume as a, no-nonsense FBI agent. The man sitting across from Aaron introduced himself as FBI agent Peter French. And Aaron says that while he sat across from Agent French, he knew that if he would have asked for an attorney, that no attorney in their right mind would tell him to go through with taking a polygraph test, and he's not wrong. Never take a polygraph test. I don't care if you're innocent. But Aaron was looking at it from a different perspective than what most of us would be looking at it through, because Aaron's brother is also an FBI agent. And Aaron says in his book that he was even thinking to himself that the FBI is the best of the best. And he says that he knew that because his brother was the best of the best. So it seems like Aaron kind of trusted these FBI agents just because his brother was also an agent. Which, I guess it makes sense. So Aaron signs the forms and the papers that say that he agrees to take a polygraph test, and he has to write down the date and time on these forms, and this is when Aaron learns that it's actually 1:55 a.m. It's been almost exactly 12 hours since he decided to call 911, and even 12 hours later, not a single soul was looking for Denise. Aaron realizes that this polygraph test isn't going to be like a quick 20-30 minute thing. Once Agent French starts going over the polygraph, how it works, and how it determines the truth from a lie. I think Aaron was thinking that this would take in half an hour or so, and that he would be able to leave with his brother Ethan, and then they could start figuring out how to help police find Denise. But that's not how this was going to go. Agent French starts asking Aaron a series of questions, and Aaron says that the first series of questions that French asked, they seem more like questions that you would ask someone during a job interview. not questions that you would ask somebody taking a polygraph test. The first series of questions were about Aaron's background, his childhood, etc. Just this first series of questions alone took over an hour. And then French started asking other questions that maybe would be asked during a polygraph test. French asked Aaron to intentionally lie about the question of whether the lights were on in the room that they were in or not. This would help indicate and gauge when Aaron was lying, so he answered no, that the lights in the room were not on. And I just want to throw this out here while we're talking about this lie detector test. Aaron hasn't slept since he was sedated. He's been in the police station, sitting in an interrogation room for more than 12 hours at this point. You would think that they would have let him sleep, maybe given him something to eat, and then maybe ask him for a polygraph test. At least that way he would be more likely to pass it, his body wouldn't be exhausted, but that's not what they did. They proceeded on with the questioning and the polygraph test. So Aaron is strapped to a blood pressure cuff, a heart monitoring machine, the whole 9 yards. And once the real series of questions started, Aaron got way too into his head. He actually started thinking about how him not sleeping and not eating much would affect his blood pressure and his heart rate. Because remember, he is in the medical field. He is a physical therapist. He also says that the blood pressure cuff had been on for so long that it was making his hand go numb. And it was almost like Aaron immediately realized that this probably wasn't a good idea. But after about an hour and a half, Agent French says that the test is done. He starts taking off the heart monitor and the blood pressure cuff, and Agent French has Aaron moved to a different chair in the same room that they just did the polygraph in. And within just a few minutes of Agent French looking at the results, he hits Aaron with "There's no doubt in my mind you failed this test. There's no doubt in my mind that you know what happened to Denise and where she is." And of course, Aaron's heart just immediately sinks. The only reason he had even agreed to take this polygraph test is because he knew he wasn't lying. So he wasn't worried about passing it. And every time that Aaron would open his mouth to respond, to say something, like in response to what Agent French was saying, French would wave him away and dismiss him before Aaron ever even had a chance to speak. Agent French was saying a lot of the same things that Detective Mustard had been saying this whole time. And after a whole lot more of Agent French telling Aaron that he could just admit to killing Denise, Agent French tells him that the FBI has dealt with tons of quote-unquote legitimate kidnapping for ransom cases, and he tells him that this story doesn't even pass the sniff test, okay? Don't even smell true, sir. But it is. That's the craziest part. It is. Aaron immediately starts to believe that he's going to be one of those people who ends up in prison for a crime that they never committed. Aaron even says in his book that he had never given innocent people being in prison much thought until this happened to him. And it made me laugh a little bit because Aaron says in his book that once they arrested him and he was sent to prison, that he would be able to watch interviews from his old high school classmates who would all tell news reporters that they, quote unquote, always knew something was off with him. Which is really funny to me because that's always what happens. Always. They're like, so-and-so murdered 3 people. You went to high school with him. What did you think? They're like, there's always something off with that boy. So Agent French is trying every tactic in the book to get Aaron to confess. He tried to use Aaron's own family. He tried to guilt him into a confession. He even told Aaron that he doesn't want his family to have to go bankrupt trying to prove his innocence. Especially when he says that Aaron knows exactly what he had done to Denise. And when that didn't work, Agent French starts bringing up Denise's family and telling Aaron that Denise's family would like to know where her remains are so they can give her a proper burial. And so they could get her before the animals do. Yeah, they really said that, and it's really sick. Especially knowing that Aaron is innocent. Now, Aaron eventually, finally, got fed up with this line of questions. And, between Detective Mustard and Agent French, they're both throwing the same accusations at him. And finally, Aaron's like, you know what? Fuck it. I want a lawyer. I'm not answering anything else until my lawyer's present. And thank God, because you should have been done that, sir. That was probably the best thing that Aaron could have done at this point, because I feel like they would have had him locked away before Denise ever even made it back home. Because like I said last week, spoiler, they both make it. So Aaron still doesn't know if his parents or if any of his other family members are even at the police station yet or not. He hasn't seen his FBI brother Ethan since he was carted away from his house in the front seat of a patrol car. And he still doesn't know if his parents and family and friends have been made aware of what's happening or what. And if they have, what have detectives and FBI agents told his family that he's done? Like, at this point, Aaron's like, did they tell my mom and dad that I killed Denise? Because they truly believe that. But Aaron's brother Ethan had called their dad Joe to tell Joe everything that Aaron had been able to relay to Ethan during their short phone call before police showed up at Aaron's house. Aaron's dad Joe says that he knew that Aaron should have never talked to the police without an attorney because Joe worked as a doctor, and he says that he knew how police looked at spouses or partners when something like this happened. And he's not wrong. But Aaron's brother Ethan wasn't just an FBI agent, he also had a law degree. And Ethan knew that Aaron would have to ask for a lawyer, that the police weren't just going to offer one up for him. But Aaron didn't know it, and how would he know it? Aaron's brother Ethan knew that, he couldn't say, hey, you can't speak to my brother until I get him a lawyer. No, Aaron would have to be the one to ask for a lawyer himself. And of course, Aaron's parents and brother had been at the police station since 6:30 the evening before. But of course, Aaron had no way of knowing this. And Aaron's mom, she said she kind of found comfort in the fact that at least Aaron would know that his family was right outside the interrogation room, waiting on him for hours and hours and hours. But out of all the police officers, detectives, and FBI agents that Aaron's mom spoke to, none of them ever told Aaron that his family was waiting right outside the doors for him. I guess the police and detectives were trying to make Aaron think that his family didn't believe him either. And even though Ethan had known this whole time that Aaron would have to be the one to ask for an attorney, Aaron, on the other hand, thought that by volunteering to help the police that they would realize that he didn't have anything to hide. Now, after the lie detector test and Agent French coming at Aaron with the same accusations that Detective Mustard had thrown at him, Aaron did finally break down and tell Agent French that he wasn't answering any more questions without a lawyer. Aaron pulled some chairs together and he laid down in the interrogation room. He was exhausted. By this point, he'd also come to the realization that disassociating from reality and trying to get some sleep were probably the only things that were going to get him through this at this point. Aaron was able to doze off on the chairs in the interrogation room and sleep for a little while before the doors opened and Detective Mustard stared back at Aaron. And instead of throwing more accusations at Aaron, this time Detective Mustard says that Aaron's brother Ethan is here. Now, Ethan had been here this whole time, but Detective Mustard's making it out like, oh, your brother's here. Now, when Ethan finally walked into the room, Aaron just burst into tears. Ethan listened to Aaron as he tried to compose himself and his thoughts, and he tries to tell Ethan what happened. Aaron says that he realized that he was speaking in jumbled phrases and that not much of what he was saying was making sense. But Aaron says that he finally just blurted out telling Ethan that he knows how crazy this story sounds, but he's telling the truth, and this is actually what happened. Ethan finally gets a word in edgewise, and he tells Aaron that it's about 6 a.m. at this point, and Ethan also tells Aaron that their parents have stayed at the police station until about 4 a.m. that morning, but that Ethan was finally able to talk them into getting a hotel room to get some sleep. From here, Aaron rambles off some things that police should be able to check pretty easily to rule him out as a suspect. Like, was Aaron sending those emails back and forth to himself? And where did the camera from the kidnappers that was mounted in the corner of his house to watch every move he made, where did that camera come from? Aaron even asked how he would have driven his car somewhere, dropped it off, and then still gotten back home. Because when police showed up at Aaron's house that morning after he called 911, his car wasn't in the driveway still, it was still gone, and it was found a good while later in a parking lot or something. So how would Aaron have gotten home with no car and no taxi company having a record of picking him up or dropping him off? Which, these are all valid questions and valid points. The police hadn't taken time to check or verify anything that Aaron had told them. They just immediately jumped to thinking that they knew exactly what happened to Denise. And then they tried to play judge, jury, and executioner, claiming that they knew he was guilty. Now, Ethan listens to Aaron talk and he just lets him finish. But then Ethan tells Aaron that he's getting him an attorney and that he doesn't know if the police officers are going to let him back in to see Aaron again. Ethan also advised Aaron that he doesn't have to speak to police again or answer any more questions unless he remembers something that may actually help them find Denise. Now, Ethan wasn't left in the room with Aaron very long, so of course he was led back out of the room that Aaron was being kept in. Ethan thought about it, and Aaron looked fine. His eyes weren't dilated, he looked exhausted, and it was obvious that he had been crying, but other than that, he looked fine. And Ethan says that this kind of eased his thoughts about Aaron possibly having like a psychotic break or something, because at this point, that was a real possibility. The way the police were acting, that was a possibility. But Ethan being able to talk to Aaron kind of cleared the air, and he knew that he was just tired. He was mentally, physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted, and the police were using that to their advantage. Now, after Ethan was able to talk to Aaron, he was sure that Aaron was innocent. But when Ethan walked out of the room, and after he'd spoke to Aaron, Detective Mustard asked Ethan if he believed Aaron. Because remember, Ethan is still an FBI agent. And Ethan told Detective Mustard that he knows that he's his brother, but that he does believe him. Ethan walked out to the parking lot of the police station and he tried calling the public defender's office. But it was pretty early and, they weren't really open yet for the day. So Ethan decided that he would start Googling criminal defense attorneys. And that's when Ethan found Daniel Russo. Russo had really good reviews, and he had been at the forefront of some of the higher profile cases in the California area. Ethan decided that this would be the kind of lawyer that Aaron was going to need, and he wasn't wrong. It was just after 6 a.m. when Ethan called criminal defense attorney Russo, but Russo answered the phone. Ain't no way I'd be in the office before 6 a.m. I don't care what my job was. But that's just me. Russo was there and he answered. And when he answered, Ethan tried his best to explain briefly what had been going on with Aaron and Denise. Russo kind of cut Ethan off and he asked Ethan if he could ride by his office to talk, which Ethan agreed to because Russo's office was only about a mile or so away from where Ethan was at the police station. Ethan showed up and explained to the best of his abilities what was going on, and from here, Russo went straight to the police station to talk to Aaron. And while Russo was talking to Aaron, Ethan went to let their parents know that he had found Aaron a lawyer. Shortly after this, Russo shows up at the police station to introduce himself to Aaron. Russo tells Aaron that the police want another DNA sample from him. Russo tells Aaron to give the police the DNA sample, and then he tells him that if police do arrest him, to not say a word, not to speak to anyone. So Russo walks Aaron out of the interrogation room, and he tells Aaron to let him get this, his fingerprints and the cheek swab, even though they both knew that police had already gotten those things from Aaron earlier. And police took their sweet-ass time getting these DNA samples and the cheek swabs, but when they were finally done, Russo gave Aaron a big trash bag full of clothes, and he tells him that the media and the press are already lined up outside, and that he needs to find something in that bag to wear besides a stained prison uniform when they walk outside. So Aaron digs through and finds a change of clothes, and he still didn't have socks or underwear, but at least he was wearing real clothes now. This is when Russo introduced Aaron to his associate Mike. The plan was for Russo to walk out first, since all the media and the news reporters already knew him. He was a high-profile lawyer. So Russo's going to walk out first and grab the attention of the media and news reporters. Aaron is told to follow Russo's associate Mike to his car. And this was just Russo's way of keeping Aaron out of the media and giving the court of public opinion time to convict Aaron before they ever learn the truth. So this was pretty smart on Russo's part. Russo's associate Mike tells Aaron before they head outside the police station that Aaron needs to get in the back of his SUV because the windows are tinted in the back. And Mike tells Aaron that he's going to drive him to Russo's office. So as Aaron walks outside, he started to think that maybe the fingerprinting and the cheek swab had taken so much longer this time because police were hoping that press would see Aaron walking out in prison clothes and looking exhausted. And again, this would kind of give the court of public opinion time to do his thing. Luckily, Russo's plan worked, and no one ever saw Aaron come out of the police station, because the media was too focused on Russo, so Mike and Aaron were able to slip out in the other direction. Mike and Aaron get into Mike's SUV, and Mike starts asking Aaron how long it had been since he'd eaten. He tells Aaron that they can't really go to his house to get clothes because it's a crime scene, but Mike says that he can swing by Target and get Aaron a change of clothes, and then they can stop and get him something to eat. And this is about the time that Aaron realized that Russo and Mike are actually on his side. They actually care if he's comfortable, and they care if he's innocent. But Aaron declines and Mike takes him straight to Russo's office instead. Once they make it to Russo's office, Aaron sits down and Russo introduces a woman named Amy. Amy is the one who will actually be representing Aaron from Russo's firm. So Amy tells Aaron that he'll be able to see his family soon, but that she needs him to go over the events that happened and not to leave anything out. Aaron went over everything with Amy, and finally he was able to see his parents. This is the first time that Aaron says he'd ever seen his dad cry. Aaron hugged everybody, they all cry, but Aaron assures them all that he did not do anything to Denise. And this is when Russo kind of chimes in and tells Aaron and his family that Vallejo Police Department are corrupt and incompetent. I didn't say it, Russo did, okay? Now, Russo and Amy is again the associate that's taken Aaron's case from Russo's firm. So Russo and Amy tell Aaron to go to his parents' house and stay there, which he does. But it takes about an hour for Aaron's parents to drive him to their house. And they weren't even there 15 minutes before Russo's associate Amy called to let Aaron know that Vallejo Police had received a proof of life recording, and she tells Aaron that they believe it is Denise. Now, even though Aaron had just made the hour-long drive with his parents to get to their house, he had to turn right back around and use his parents' car to drive another hour right back to Vallejo to listen to this recording. And Aaron's dad tells him that he doesn't even think he should go back to the police station since the police may be trying to trick him, like just to get him to the station for more questioning, or maybe to try to arrest him on some other like frivolous charges, just to be able to hold him there. But Aaron knows that there were real kidnappers that took Denise. Because honestly, at this point, Aaron's entire family are just kind of blindly believing and trusting Aaron's story about kidnappers coming into his house in the middle of the night and taking Denise. But Aaron knows that this proof of life recording has to be important or the kidnappers wouldn't have sent it. So Aaron gets in touch with Detective Mustard to let him know that he's on his way to the police station to hear the recording, and Detective Mustard tells Aaron to park out back and to come through the back door so that he can avoid the media circus that was out front of the police station. So that's what Aaron does. He pulls around back when he makes it to the police station, and Detective Mustard opens the door for Aaron to let him inside. Detective Mustard leads Aaron into the opposite direction of the interrogation rooms this time, and into what looks like a conference room with a huge table and people sitting all around it. Aaron is introduced to all of these people who were sitting around this huge conference table, most of which were FBI agents. He's even introduced to a hostage negotiator by the name of Agent Vinny. They ask Aaron to go through the kidnapping again, and Aaron agrees. But Aaron says that he realized that most of the questions that these agents were asking him this time were more about the kidnappers and not so much about his relationship problems. And after what I'm sure felt like forever, Agent Vinny finally pulls out a laptop and asks Aaron if he can listen to the proof of life recording and either try to help verify or deny that the voice belongs to Denise. Now, after listening to the proof of life message, Agent Vinny asks Aaron what he thinks, and Aaron tells him it sounds like Denise, but that in this recording, she sounds scared. Then Agent Vinny hands Aaron his phone back. The police department had had Aaron's phone this entire time. Agent Vinny asked Aaron to look through it and see if there was anything that maybe the police had missed when they were going through it. And this, I'm sure, confused Aaron because the FBI has specialists and shit, but whatever. Aaron looks through it when he sees all these missed calls and text messages. But then Aaron realizes that his phone was on airplane mode. He can't figure out why the police would have put his phone on airplane mode when Aaron had very clearly told them over and over and over again that the kidnappers were supposed to be getting in touch with him on his cell phone to arrange the pickup of the money and then the drop-off of Denise. And it's clear that the phone was put on airplane mode because they did not believe what Aaron was saying. Agent Vinny tells Aaron to take it off of airplane mode, and when he does, Aaron's phone is completely flooded with voicemails from the media, text messages from friends and family members checking in on him. And Aaron listens to all these voicemails, and quite a few of them are just silent. But then he gets to his emails. There was an email that was already opened, and it was from the same email thread that Aaron and the kidnappers had been using, but this email was one that Aaron hadn't seen. So it would have had to have been opened by police, right? The email was timestamped at Monday, March 23rd at 7:46 p.m., and it said, We will call you about 9 p.m. on your mobile phone. Your liaison will be the same contact as during the acquisition phase. Please verify that you have received this message." And that email was followed by another email that said, "We are waiting on your acknowledgement at 8:13 p.m. These two emails had been sent on Monday. It was now Tuesday after 11 p.m., so technically almost Wednesday, and police hadn't responded to either one of these emails from the kidnappers. And remember, Detective Mustard had told Aaron over and over and over again, like, why aren't these kidnappers reaching out? They haven't tried to reach out since you've called 911. Well, as it turns out, the kidnappers had tried to reach out to Aaron, but police officers, detectives, whoever were too focused on getting Aaron to admit that he killed Denise to even check the emails. But somebody opened the emails. That's my thing. The emails had been opened. So somebody saw the emails and then blatantly ignored them and then lied about having not seen the emails from the kidnappers. Make it make sense. Aaron says that he was pissed, and rightfully so. And he says that he saw red. But then he realized that he needed the FBI's help to get Denise back. So he put his anger on the back burner and asked what he needed to do to help get Denise back. Agent Vinny tells Aaron that they want him to send back a reply to the email. Yeah, they wanted Aaron to reply to an email that the kidnappers had sent almost 24 hours ago, while they had his phone, computer, and anything else that he would have been able to use to respond to an email on. But Aaron does what they ask because he's a better man than I ever would be. And he sends a text message to the number that had first sent the text message right after he'd woken up after Denise had been taken. So he sent an email and a text message, both, to the kidnappers. Now from here, Aaron goes back to the hotel where his parents were staying and he falls asleep. He had not slept in almost 48 hours. His body didn't give him much of an option besides falling asleep, but he still didn't sleep much. Aaron says that he was jarred awake by the dream of a man telling him to wake up and then seeing red laser sights swimming around the room. Aaron realized that he was only dreaming, and when he looked at the clock, it was 3 a.m. That was around the same time that the kidnappers had woken him and Denise up the night of the kidnapping. Aaron says in his book that he woke up at 3 a.m. from the same dream for over a year, and that even now, so many years later, that he still considers it a blessing to sleep through 3 a.m. on any given night. Aaron says that he fought with himself that night in the hotel room about whether he did the right thing by calling 911 or not while he waited on the sun to come up. Now, I'm going to pause us here because I want to jump back to the house with Denise and the voice. Because the voice had just told Denise that they had lost contact with Aaron. And then he tells her that even if Aaron went to the police, that this would be a good thing for his organization because this would show people who were thinking about hiring them that they could be successful and not kill their victims, even if police were involved. Denise says she wondered who would be at the drop-off or how the drop-off would work if they had lost contact with Aaron. And she wonders if her making it out alive is even still an option. She even asked the voice about being killed since Aaron had gone to the police. And the voice tells her that she doesn't need to worry about that. He says that he has an escape plan that he has planned out as a backup plan if things ever go wrong that he would use for his own family. This doesn't make Denise feel any better. I don't blame her. The voice explains that it doesn't matter to him because he isn't the one in charge of who hires the organization to do these jobs. He says that only one person in the group knows who hires them and that they do this to ensure that all the members of the organization play by the same rules and they do as they're told. Then the voice starts asking Denise if she knows anything about Aaron's ex-fiancée, Jennifer. Or if maybe she knows who would want to hire this organization to kidnap Jennifer. Denise tells the voice that she doesn't really know much about Jennifer besides like work-related stuff, and that all she knows about Jennifer is that she cheated on Aaron with a police officer for more than 2 years. And then the voice is just like, that's probably it. This is what made Denise start to wonder if there could possibly be a police officer that was involved in this. Denise puts it all together that if a police officer was somehow involved in all this, then that would explain why they weren't at all worried about being caught, And then it would explain why this organization had been called off a week prior when they were originally planning to do the kidnapping, because the voice had told Denise that the organization decided that there were too many cops in the area and that they would just wait. And the voice had also told Denise that they watched their victims even years after they released them. And all of this would be made easier if there was a corrupt police officer that was helping. So it all kind of made sense to her, and it makes sense to me. The voice leaves the room, and he comes back in a short time later. And Denise says that she already knew exactly what he was about to say, and she was right. The voice told Denise that the higher-ups had watched the recording of them, quote-unquote, having sex, and that the higher-ups didn't think that it looked believable enough. The voice told Denise that they were going to have to do it again, but then he kind of cuts himself off and stops mid-sentence, and he tells Denise to hold on. He tells her that he's going to go grab his phone so that he can tell her exactly word for word what the higher-ups said. Denise says that he walked out of the room and came back in a few minutes later. And even though she's still blindfolded with the blacked-out swim goggles, she does say that she could tell by the direction and the inflection in his voice that he was looking down, presumably at his phone, and that it even kind of sounded as if he were reading something. The voice told her, quote, "The recording must be believable. You have to look like a legitimate couple who has been having an affair for a while. Like this isn't the first time that you've been together. She can't wear the goggles. You must kiss and say things that indicate that this is an affair. It must seem like you're both enjoying it." But then the voice tells Denise that he'll have to figure out a way to take the goggles off without risking her seeing his face. And he walks out of the room telling Denise that he's going to go try to figure something out. When the voice comes back into the room, though, Denise has a solution to the goggles coming off, but also a believable way to make it where she still wouldn't be able to see his face. And she says that she thought about the book 50 Shades of Grey, and she tells the voice that they can use like a regular necktie over her eyes as a blindfold. You know, like a kink thing, like slight BDSM-ish. This is when the voice tells Denise how strong she's been through all of this, but then he tells her that he's just going to use clear Scotch tape and tape her eyes shut so that you won't be able to tell there's tape over her eyes, and he says that maybe it'll just look like her eyes are closed. Denise already knows what's about to happen, so she asks for wine before they have to, quote-unquote, have sex again, and the voice brings her 2 glasses of wine and a few airplane bottles of liquor. The voice gives Denise the tape and he walks out of the room while she fixes it over her eyes. And when he comes back into the room, he starts the same way as before, kissing her on her skin, putting on a condom before he climbed on top of her again. Denise's eyes instinctively try to open, but she can only open her eyes enough to see the top part of his head, and she can see what looks like a brownish-colored hair. Denise does everything that she can think of to make the voice finish as quickly as possible without making it look forced, in hopes that this time it would be good enough for the higher-ups to accept it. Once it's over, Denise asks to be taken to the bathroom to clean up, and it takes everything in her not to let the voice see her cry. The voice walks Denise into the bathroom where she could be alone in the shower to cry in peace. Now, a little while later, after Denise had showered and was already back in her room, the voice comes in to explain to Denise that Aaron had for sure gone to the police and that the plans to drop her off would have to be a little different now. Since Aaron wasn't going to be bringing the money, then he also wouldn't be there to pick Denise up. The voice tells Denise that he's not going to be able to drop her off in the Bay Area where she lived. He tells her that she's on the news and that police are out everywhere in the Bay Area, and then the voice asks Denise if there's anywhere else that she had family that he could take her. And Denise tells the voice that he could drop her off in Southern California where her parents lived. Denise and the voice talked for a few minutes about all the people that she knows that live within a few blocks of where her mom and dad live separately, but only blocks apart. And they finally agree on a drop-off spot that's kinda in between her mom and her dad's house. Then the voice asks Denise if her parents have money, and she immediately starts to worry, thinking that he's gonna try to get some kind of ransom money out of her parents. But the voice must have been able to tell what Denise was thinking, because he tells her that they aren't going to ask her parents for ransom money, but the voice does tell Denise that her parents are probably going to want to hire her a lawyer. And of course, Denise hasn't been watching TV. She has no idea that the police think that Aaron killed her. So she doesn't know anything except what she has physically been there for, like the kidnapping and the time in the house with the voice. So Denise finally just asks the voice, like, why would I need a lawyer? And the voice tells Denise that since Aaron went to the police, that she was going to have to talk to the police too once he dropped her off. And that it would be okay for her to answer the police's questions, but that it would be smart for her not to speak to the police without her parents getting her a lawyer. Which he does tell her that a lawyer roughly cost about $5,000, and again, I can't figure out what's up with the worry that he pretends to have about Denise and her comfort. It's so strange. The voice left the room and he comes back in a while later and he helps Denise to the restroom before giving her another dose of sedatives. Once Denise is back in the room, the voice hands Denise an iPad and he tells her to lift the swim goggles and read the article that he has pulled up on the iPad. Denise lifts the goggles and she starts reading the news article about her kidnapping. The article says that she was kidnapped and that Aaron called police to report her as kidnapped. It also has quotes from Denise's parents, and once she read those quotes, that was the first time during this entire traumatic ordeal that Denise had cried in front of this man. I don't know how she made it all those hours without crying, but she did. All the way up until he showed her this article with quotes from her parents. And part of me thinks that he did this just to get a reaction out of her. Now, the voice leaves Denise alone in the room after she tells him that she'd like to be left alone now. And then later that evening, the voice brings Denise dinner before they discuss the drop-off again. The voice tells Denise that they'll need to leave by about 2 a.m. But he tells her that the trip to Southern California is going to take them about 9 or 10 hours to make, just because he wants to take back roads, presumably to keep from being pulled over. Afterwards, Denise can feel her eyes getting heavy from the sedative, and she says that she dozed off to sleep, and that she realized the next time that she'd woke up that it would either be the first day of the rest of her life, or it would be her last day alive, and there was really no in-between. The voice was either going to let her go like he kept saying he would, or he was going to kill her. But she knew that one of the two things were going to happen. When Denise is woken up, though, the voice is telling her that it's time for them to leave. He takes her to the restroom one last time in that house as he walks her out the door. Before they make it to the gravel pavement, because remember in part 1, Denise could feel that they were driving on a gravel driveway. So before he makes Denise walk onto the gravel pavement, he tells her that he has shoes that she can wear. He slides the shoes on her feet and they walk outside. The voice tells Denise that she'll have to wear the swim goggles during the first part of the trip, but that once the sun starts to come up, that he'll have to stop the car, tape her eyes shut, and then put sunglasses on her face so that she doesn't look suspicious to anyone passing by or anybody they drive next to. And the voice said that Denise would also have to ride in the passenger seat of the car this time. He helps her into the car, and the comforter that she had taken from Aaron's house is in the front seat, and the seat's leaned back, I guess so she could sleep. The voice tells Denise that since the ride is going to be long, that he's going to give her a double dose of the sedatives. Now, after Denise takes this medicine, the voice tells Denise that he's already double-checked with all the other members of this organization, and he tells her that she can tell police everything that he's told her. She can tell police everything that he's told her about this group and what they do, why they're usually hired. She can tell them everything. He tells Denise that there are only 2 things that she cannot tell police. The voice tells Denise that she can't tell police that any of the members of this organization are a part of the military. And she also can't tell police that her and the voice, quote unquote, had sex. And he tells Denise these 2 things that she can't tell police several times during the trip to drop her off. Now, one more thing that the voice tells Denise before she finally falls asleep from the sedatives is he gives Denise an email address that the organization has created with some variation of her first and last name, like something that would be really easy for her to remember. And he tells her that if she ever needs to reach out to them for anything, or if she ever has questions, that she can reach him at that email address. Why is this so weird? Is it just me, or is this exceptionally weird with how much he seems to care about Denise? Or at least how much he pretends to care about Denise. Now, after Denise falls asleep, the voice wakes her up and tells her that they're at a rest stop so she can use the restroom before they finish the drive. Denise says that she immediately started thinking of all the ways that the voice could kill her. But to her surprise, she heard the creaking of a big rusted door, and she heard the door shut, so she removed the swim goggles, and she was actually in a restroom that you would find at like a rest stop or a campsite. Now, after this restroom break, they get back into the car, and Denise dozes off and wakes up every so often. But the last couple of times she wakes up, the voice reassures her that they're only stopped because they're stuck in LA traffic. This is when she realizes how close to home she is. The next time she's woken up, Denise wakes up to her body being jolted against the seatbelt. The voice sounded agitated, and he tells her that they've just hit another car. Like, sir, what is happening here? Are you kidding me? No, he wasn't kidding. He got out of the car and then back in the car a short time later, telling Denise that there was no damage to either car so they can keep going. This sounds like some me shit, y'all. I can't drive. I be hitting everything. And Denise is, of course, dozing in and out of sleep from the sedatives that the voice keeps giving her. But the last time that she's woken up, it's her being woken up to the voice telling her that they've made it. He told her that he needed to find somewhere secluded enough to park so that he could help her out of the car. The voice tells Denise that he wishes that they had met under different circumstances and that he's never doing a job like this again. All this weird shit before he helps her out of the car and tells her to count to 10 slowly before she removes the tape from her eyes. He tells her that they'll be watching her as he drives off, and Denise waits until she's certain that the voice has driven far enough away before she removes the tape from her eyes. Denise only walked about a quarter of a mile from where she was dropped off at before she saw the street name that her mom lived on. She says in her book that she was literally amazed that he dropped her off exactly where he said he was going to. And this is where we're going to leave off on part 2. We'll pick back up next week on part 3, hopefully the final part. But y'all thought this story was crazy already. You just ain't heard a thing yet. Let's get to the review of the week because I'm ready to get this rest of this research done. Because this book, y'all, I got it linked in the description of the credit sources under the episodes for this case. This book is wildin'. I'm like sucked in, locked and loaded. If you need like an audiobook and this case interests you, yeah, this be the one. So I'm going to find a review of the week and then we're going to jump off of here. This review comes from Facebook because, hey, we can do that now because your girl found that out last week, remember? Okay. This one is from Kristen Tate. It says, 6 out of 5 stars. Girl, okay. And the review says, for the truth and rawness and realness that is AB's telling of these stories, even the ones I knew all about. I had only thought I knew the whole story. She deep dives. I enjoy her authentic voice and opinions about the details and people. Thank you, girl. Y'all are just too nice to me. I swear, I don't understand it. But for real, it's time to hop off of here. You know what time it is. Time to go get them crotch goblins out of school. Let's do it again. Same time, same place, next Wednesday. See you then.
That's how my mama murdered a podcast.